Now, North Hempstead, you have a lot of, I almost want to say mountainous regions. I mean, when Fred Parola talks about walking, he says he much prefers to walk like the flat areas, you know, a Mineola or something like that.
Oh, he's a wuss. That's all I can say about Fred Parola. Fred, you heard it. Get out there, walk those hills.
Up in Port Washington, yeah. Someplace in Plano, someplace in
Port Washington, where you live.
Massachusetts.
You know, I mean, that gets kind of tough. How, when you were campaigning in North Hempstead, I mean, how did you deal with reaching out to voters?
You do it. I mean, you climb those hills. You go to Manhasset Hills, you walk up those steps. You go to Harbor Hills in Great Neck, which is all beautiful homes, and you've got to walk up all these steps to get there. You stay in shape. There's no question about it. And you know who your good volunteers are because they'll go walk those areas. Of course, you know, the areas where the homes are a little bit closer together and it's flatter. I mean, that's where Fred Parola is going to be. Well, then we'll have to meet him in the high ground somewhere.
Right. Right. Now, you've both campaigned in an era when computers have become commonplace. Tell me a little bit about your use of computers in your early campaign. Now, you're a three-term assemblyman, so you've been running almost as long as Ben has been running. You ran first in 1987 for town supervisor?
That's right.
And then won 2 years later?
That's right.
Okay, so basically you've been campaigning during the same period. How have you used computers to date? I guess Ben, we'll start with you.
Well, generally you go to the Board of Elections. That's your first stop, and you get a tape of all the people in that geographic area, whether it's the town or whether it's the county. You take the election districts, and the information there is based on, you can tell if it's a man or woman, it's the age, where they live, and their address, and that's your basic mailing list, and you work that out. And what you may weed out from that is the number of families. There are about 77,000 families in the town of North Hempstead, while there are about 220,000 residents. So those families are registered to vote, and that becomes your target. And what you try to do is you try to take areas of the election districts where you know that there's certain issues that will resonate with people in that community, and you try to target mail. Right. If it's an incinerator issue up in Port Washington, well, people in other parts of the town have no interest in that. So you target those EDs that are going to be most impacted with your position on that if you think it's going to be favorable to them. You know if they're Democrats, Republicans, liberals, right to life, conservatives or independents. You can find that out from the tape at the Board of Elections. So that's your first stop for anybody who's going to be running for office. Right. And you take that information and you start using it the way to cull lists for mailings.
Did you use lists, computerized lists from the very beginning, from the first race, or did that come later?
I think as we became a little more sophisticated, I think we did more the second time out than we had done previously. My first campaign was really a book of novices, and you learned a lot about what not to do. Right. And one of the things that the Democrats had told me early on was do not go into areas where you don't have a strong presence. Well, the problem is you couldn't win if you didn't have some impact in those areas. So we changed the rules a little bit and went into the parts of the town down in Mike's area where he runs so well, in areas where Democrats really had not been seen before, and we made an inroad. Now, we didn't win those districts, not by a long shot, but we went from 10% in '87 to maybe 35%. You know, and as the results came in, our supporters would say, "Oh God, we got killed in those districts." But we had seen a 20%, 25% increase, so we knew that we had a positive impact.
So, Mike, how did computers start getting into your campaigns?
Well, we have done actually not only try to develop the list, but we've done an analysis. In '93, when I ran in North Hempstead, we did a voter demographic overlay. And we targeted, we painted the whole town in terms of where people lived, and what were their incomes, how many children did they have, what kind of jobs were they, what kind of education, what type of preferences have they set up in terms of even purchasing, where they had gone to school. And we were able to basically draw a roadmap as to where the likely supporters would be, where you need to hit, where you had swing areas, and not just based upon vote, but also based upon potential votes, as Bennett said, to try and reach out into the other areas where traditionally perhaps you know, the party had not done that well, and try to change some of the ideas, and also try to focus on new people coming in who perhaps either had not been registered or had been, you know, independence is a huge block now of independent voters, and it's getting larger every day, and I guess that reflects the cynicism of politics. And the challenge for the two political parties is who's going to go in there, develop credibility with these voters, and bring them, if not registered into their party, bring them to the voting booth to vote for them. Right. And that's what we use this whole computer-generated survey to do.
And the only other thing I want to add is that you want to get a primary voter list. You want to go back and see who voted in primaries, who votes every time out, because those are the people, when you're down to your last few dollars, you want to get an extra mailing out. You don't want to waste it on people who are registered to vote but may not come out to vote for quite some time, or haven't voted recently. So you go back to the people who voted year after year, because you have a good idea that those are going to come out, because even as they talk about in the election that will be passed when this is aired, the apathy among voters. I'll give you an idea. When I ran in North Hempstead in '91, I got as many votes as both the Republican and Democratic candidate received in this last election gone by, so that the amount of people who are coming out to vote on local elections has gone down dramatically.
Now, strategically, how do you integrate what you learned from looking at the computer and looking at the results of what you compiled into that door-to-door, into that I mean, does it directly translate that information?
You take a big map and you color coordinate, which was what we did. We put the green areas where
Right.
we had run before as an assemblyman done well.
Right.
And this is North Hempstead now. And then we go to the gray areas, literally, and then the red areas. And the red where we had the least support, or the least base, potential base. And then the gray areas were the bases that were going to be, you know, either leaning one way, leaning another, and would be the strongest areas to pick up new votes. And that's really where we target a lot of the
Now, if you've
mail-in.
identified